We jumped through the hoops, did the dance, and in the end, we got what we needed. 2 behavioral profiles, slicing our suspects open like autopsy reports. Never liked criminal behavior analysts. The way they look at you like you're a set of numbers on a spreadsheet. They don't see people, just patterns. Makes you think you don't drink coffee because you like it, but because you're a 30-something male, raised in a middle-class family, on a diet of routine and quiet desperation, with a caffeine habit programmed into your brain like factory settings. They get under your skin. But their work? It's the difference between rolling the dice and stacking the deck. With the aces in the sleeve, the interrogation stopped being a guessing game. It was press next to continue. First up reigns our favorite security guard, a man drowning in his own sweat. His profile was textbook. Too much pressure and he'd shatter. Too little and he'd play dumb. So we made sure he got just enough to put him in the right frame of mind. Getting ripped out of bed in the middle of the night, thrown into the back of a black SUV, with drones circling overhead like hungry vultures, helicopters carving up the sky. Yeah, that set the stage nicely. By the time we sat down with him, he was a walking confession waiting to happen. He came apart at the seams the moment we opened our mouths, crying, pleading, talking in circles, said they threatened his job and his family. And in that order, the guy knew his priorities. So we didn't need to push, just nudge, friendly, reassuring, let him believe there was still a way out, that all he had to do was tell the truth, and this wouldn't end as badly as it could. Give him something to grab onto before he drowned in a hell of his making. He laid it out. One night after work, a van pulls up, door slides open, and inside, a hooded figure, speaking in offers and ultimatums. Play along, and after the heist, he and his family get new identities, a safe little life in a Lotus facility, and a tidy $50,000 special merit bonus for services rendered. Say no, and he loses everything, his job, his future, his family's safety. Comply with their demands or not, he was told that either way, the money was going into his account, the trail already laid out to paint him as the perfect fall guy. Whether he helped or not, the noose was already around his neck. Hard not to feel for the guy. There were no good choices, just different flavors of losing. Too bad for us. The only thing he had to offer was guilt. He spilled his life story like we were his last rites. Confessed to swiping a neighbor's newspaper when he was 5, sneaking extra breaks at work, stuff no one gave a damn about. When it came to who was actually pulling the strings, he had nothing. Just another pawn in someone else's game. So we turned to the real problem. A man who didn't just want to win the game, he wanted to rewrite the rules. Our mad scientist with a god complex. Seeing him in that chair was something else. The way he shifted, uncomfortable and irritated, like a reptile stuffed into a skin suit, itching at a spot he couldn't reach. He wasn't afraid, he wasn't broken, he was annoyed. Like he had places to be, equations to write, delusions to nurture. We knew exactly who we were up against. A genius with a god complex. A man who saw the rest of us as footnotes in his manifesto. A thinker who believed he was the only one capable of real thought. His profile told us all we needed to know. Brilliant, arrogant, obsessed with ideology. The kind of guy who doesn't respond to threats but can't resist a challenge. He didn't fear pain, he feared being proven wrong. So we played it his way. Threw him off balance right out of the gate. Sat down, smiled, told him we liked science too. Hell, one of the officers even won first place at the science fair once. Built a volcano. Best in the district. Amsel stared dead-eyed, like we'd just announced we ate glue as a hobby. Then he scoffed, called it primitive. Then spent 10 minutes ranting, unprompted, why most science fairs are intellectually bankrupt, and why real breakthroughs required real vision. And that was the first crack. The first little chip in his perceived God's armor. He couldn't help himself. He had to talk. So we pressed. If governments were blind, corrupt, self-destructive, then what did that make him? So far, they too were the villains. So who was the hero? Who was gonna fix the mess? That's when he started preaching. Not a confession, not to him. Just education. Enlightenment. For minds too small to understand on their own. Lotus. Not an organization, not a name you could trace to a boardroom or a leader. Just a movement, a belief shared by those who saw the writing on the wall. Governments were obsolete. power was wasted on fools. Humanity was sprinting toward extinction, chasing technological breakthroughs with no oversight, no fail-safes, playing with forces it didn't understand. Someone had to stop it. Someone had to hit the brakes before the world burned itself down. And the only way to stop it? Strip it all away. Reset civilization to a pre-industrial era before it built something it couldn't control. Take humanity back, not to the Stone Age, not to chaos, but to a world before the risks outweighed the rewards. A world without governments, without corporations, without blind men leading the charge into oblivion. The best part, he didn't even realize he was confessing. Too caught up in his own voice, too eager to prove how much smarter he was than us. When we pushed, he sneered, told us if we had two brain cells to rub together, we'd see it too. That the answer was right in front of us, that anyone who had seen the Lotus database, really seen it, would understand. Because Lotus wasn't just an ideology, it was a network, a living, breathing system. Lotus cells weren't just groups of operatives, they were clusters of people connected by belief, by proximity. And each cluster had access to the Lotus database, an archive that, for all practical purposes, was infinite. No one knew who set it up, no one knew when, no one knew why. But if you were in, you had everything. And buried in all that noise between his rants and his condescension, he gave us the one thing we needed. He was right. We should have seen it. The Lotus mainframe activity spiked by 70% right after the heist. A surge in processing power that didn't just happen by accident. That kind of efficiency boost doesn't come out of thin air. It comes from raw, untapped energy. And when we lined up the timestamps, it was clear. The gravity device wasn't just stolen. It was plugged in. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't an experiment. It was a power cell, feeding something vast, feeding Lotus itself. That changed everything. This wasn't just about recovering stolen tech. This was about unraveling something bigger. A system built on secrets, running on something it was never supposed to have. We had a lead, a new path to push, a trail that would either take us to the heart of Lotus or straight into hell. In the end, Amsel thought he was playing us, but the thing about men like him, they always talk, because they have to. Because silence means being ignored. And to someone like Victor Amsel, that's worse than death.